Hello, Boker Tov, good morning. We started the day a bit late. Now we're not. What's going on? We started the day a bit late today. Sorry. And I reviewed my videos and decided I must improve. So I'm going to try to focus. So, yeah, I want to talk about the closure and other issues as well. So, just to sum up my two videos with Germaine Greer, the feminist, Australian feminist, talking about transgenders and women, I think I wasn't focused enough to state my conclusion that the problem with the transgender debate is that, one, it's not a debate, and the other problem is because you're not allowed to say anything. Are you okay? She's having trouble walking. We're not going to take a long walk, it looks like. And she has nail polish. The cat, look, if anybody knows how to take nail polish, to get nail polish off a dog, the cat knocked down my nail polish. See why I can't focus? Always something. And in order to get my attention or whatever, and the nail polish splashed all over the floor, and I was cleaning it, but I guess she walked in the nail polish, and I have no idea how to get it off. We'll see. We'll think about it. I find walking gets me thinking. So I did at least two videos on transgenders, which got views, because it actually takes away attention, time, viewers from the real issue of feminism. People hate to talk about feminism and women's rights, and it seems like people just don't like to talk about it. Try to get views talking about women's rights or human rights or whatever. There are certain triggers, of course. If you're talking about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, that will get a lot of views, depending on how you provocate. And it's about media power also, and about how to get people's attention and what is really important in society and what is a distraction. And what is maybe something that maybe talking about transgender can also be exposing other things in society. So definitely it exposes how the media can get hijacked by a very small minority while ignoring the big issues. So what are the big issues? So this is now I'm getting to the second topic. What is the big issue for me at the moment where I'm living? It's the education system. I don't have children in the education system here, or ever had. My children do not grow up here in Israel. They do not go through the Israeli education system. They went through Swiss education system, the public one, and the Jewish Swiss education system, both of which deeply disappointed me. And I'm deeply disappointed in myself that I even put them through those systems. And I'm thinking there must have been another way, or at least I really didn't expect the Swiss public school system to have been so dogmatic, so uncreative, so old-fashioned. But the Israeli school system is not only that, but it's also full of teachers that are really stupid, and full of principals that are even more stupid. Like the one I encountered recently, who fired me day before Rosh Hashanah because I was 5 minutes late, even though my bus was late, 15 minutes. And yes, I didn't tell her I was late, and that was irresponsible, but she didn't seem to mind the violence that I've experienced in the class, pupils that are really very violent, something that I have not seen in the very difficult schools I've worked for, in whatever you call, whatever preposition you use in Israel. I've never seen anyone slamming the head of a pupil like the way I saw a girl do it. And yes, I was shocked because I'm a sensitive person, maybe more sensitive than I should be, or is normal or whatever, but this sort of apathy that I encountered and hostility from the principal, who wants everything to be covered up and hush-hush, was just a symptom of a very sick system where people get to be principals. God knows why. God only knows why. I have a sister-in-law who was a principal for a school of refugees. She's also an inspector. And the women have completely destroyed the family that was also not in a good situation. If you take the Holocaust on the one hand and mental illness plus money on the other hand from the Israeli side. And yes, you want to say something too. So it is personal for me, that's what I'm saying. My sister-in-law has completely destroyed the family by going after my mom's and father's money, mostly my father's, and making it her own by encouraging my brother to be a greedy, lying, cheating, asshole bastard who takes advantage of the fact that his sister is in a divorce case and just takes over, goes to the bank and empties the safe with my sister, who claims to be mentally ill, lives in Canada, with a large amount of money she got from my father's lifelong hard work plus inheritance that he had, and just both of them living very carefree, wealthy life, especially the one with my sister-in-law who was living in Israel. She just doesn't care about morality. She knows where her husband got the money. I'm sure she knows how he got the money because she treated my mother like a golden goose that's there to lay golden eggs for her. Now, my mother was not an easy person. She was a kindergarten teacher for most of her career with issues. She had issues, and somehow she managed not to be at home. You would have expected a kindergarten teacher to be at home when her kids come home from school. And since I'm much younger than my brother and sister, I was pretty much left on my own with a key from a much too early age. Because I work with young kids and I see that nobody's left alone at 5 or 6 year old on their own with a key for hours. I remember just walking the streets because I sometimes forgot the key. And into this unhealthy family comes this greedy woman who was raised in a area that I actually had the big displeasure of working for in the summer. The slums of Tel Aviv. Well, it's not really Tel Aviv, it's borderline Chulon. Very bad neighborhood. It's not just lack of education, it's just the way people talk and the violence of the verbal violence, etc., etc. It's not just the poverty, because it's not just about money. It's just the lack of values of anything, and so into this situation comes this greedy woman who manipulated my mother, who banned my daughter's bat mitzvah, just did everything possible to control. We say in Hebrew, afred umshol, to separate and control. Manipulated my brother, who anyway has a very weak character himself. And my sister is not a problem to manipulate because she doesn't have any values. She married very difficult men. One of them alcoholic, another one is a gambler. And then she says she doesn't have money for food to my mother. And not only did she get money for food, she had money to buy house after house after house, accumulating a lot of wealth. But I wouldn't have been bitter had she been there for her own father's funeral. Had she been there when her father was dying of cancer. I don't remember my sister visiting my father in the hospice. She didn't even show up for his funeral because she was pregnant. I was pregnant and flying back and forth from Europe, and definitely if the man who gave me life would have died, I would have been there for his funeral. But not only didn't she come to his funeral, she offered not only no support but only difficulties and complaints. Don't you care for children while her husband ran around in bars in Tel Aviv? Me. who took those children to the beach, who took them to museums when I was in Canada, who flew there every year to help her out with the kids, who had to lie about the cat, the family cat, disappearing, which she actually just dumped the cat after years. She had a cat. For years she had this cat, and her new husband didn't like it, so I had to lie to my nieces, especially one of them who was crying, "Where's her cat?" and to say that I don't know, even though I knew damn well that that woman abandoned that cat in Canada. Well, maybe they have a better system than in Israel, but it's still not a nice thing to abandon a cat after many years of him being your cat, which just shows the character of this woman. So how you treat animals is how you treat people, and parents as well. So my father was dying of cancer for 2 years. Between the age of 16 and 18, I had to come home to a father that was really in great deal of pain. He wanted to be at home, and it was very difficult for me to witness this. I helped a lot because there was nobody there after the nurse went home, and my mother was at work. I came home from school to a dying man for 2 years, and I studied very hard and got very good grades because I really wanted to accomplish something. I'm not going to get into what. And where was my brother? He was serving in Eilat in the Red Sea. He never came home. Hardly came home. I found my father when he died, dead. I came home to a dead father one day, and I did not get support from my siblings ever. But they definitely looked after his money. They cared only about his money. Same thing with my grandparents, whom I visited for 10 years. Every Friday night, who were deeply manipulated by my greedy aunt, who had she had no problem with money. She was very wealthy. Her husband was very, very successful and wealthy, and yet she manipulated my grandmother into giving her the inheritance, and I was just cut off. And I'm not talking about money, I'm just saying just a sentimental gift of some sort, like the Sabbath candles or anything. So my mother went in there, she took everything, and she took everything, and then so this is my life story. Of course it impacts everything around my life. So instead of becoming a bitter drunk or alcoholic or drug addicted person, or I decided that I want to help make this world better. So I switched to education from psychology. My graduate degree, during my graduate degree, tells you how much I planned everything. I just switched after one semester from creative arts, creative therapy to this education degree, thinking I can impact the way people think better. And then it's been a slap in the face ever since. I've moved back here 4 years ago. I've gone from one bad school to another. Because of one course, I don't have my teaching certificate, and there's just no flexibility. So I have to invest thousands of shekels and do the teaching degree. And I'm just sort of not really in a situation where I feel I can just spend money, which I need desperately for basic life necessities such as eating, paying bills, etc. So I'm stuck in this limbo. So right now, I'm in a good place. I'm in kindergarten again, which is where I started from when I was a student. And I love kindergarten. And the kids, now I really found a way to work with them through yoga and just singing and movement. But the problem is they shut down the kindergartens. And I could have maybe worked through special needs, but a lot of times all these little jobs, I have to chase. I get very little paid and I have to chase for the money, even though it's an official job. And the taxes slaughter you unless you fill in all this paperwork. And it's just so much bureaucracy. It just really takes away my motivation at the moment to work. And since they shut down my job, first I thought like a school child, oh great, I don't have work. Then I realized, wow, I also don't have money coming in, and I have mouths to feed. And I'm just really scared. And my brother's reaction was to cut me off. Now, I have to tell you something. I did react emotionally. I did scream at him on the phone because I'm thinking, why should I be in this situation where I'm financially so unstable when my father was wealthy? I lived always, I never had to worry about anything. Then all of a sudden at my age, I have to worry about everything. My husband still owes me money he didn't pay, and I'm stuck in Europe, the money, and I have to go through a lawyer, and that costs money. So I'm pretty much stuck. And it really makes me angry that I see YouTube channels that make a lot of money doing nonsense. So let's talk about this. How people reach a situation where people manipulate a parent to get inheritance when they do nothing, when they do absolutely nothing for that parent. Because I know exactly how my siblings treated my parents, and that was nothing. And how dare a man like that actually criticize me and say I was not a good daughter when he was not even there when his father was dying. And he could have asked the army to be closer to home. You could have asked to be in a base near home when your father is dying of cancer and supported the family. But the problem in my family, there was never a division of like power. And this is, I think, is like a mirror of society. Like, you know, some people are stuck dealing with a lot. Like when I'm a teacher, I have to deal with so much, and then the rest of the society can just make money from apps or computer or business ideas. I don't know what they do, but there are a lot of wealthy people here that somehow make a lot of money in Israel, and they don't need to be responsible for other people's lives. Whereas with me, I feel I'm always responsible, whether it's at home for my animals, which is my choice, yes, but still responsibility that I welcome and need, and it's part of my personality. And then I have at school to take care of children, and I don't have any support not from the country. I get a salary that is insulting. I get less than a cleaning lady, even though I have a master's degree from the United States. And I just get treated by the education system like subhuman. When a principal of a school who's less educated than me and has no value system of what is right and wrong, it's not right for a girl to bash a boy's head on a table and then continue to go to school. And then it's my fault. And then she says, did I say it's your fault? You didn't have to say it, but you imply it. But when you fire me for being 5 minutes late and blame me for the behavior of a very difficult classroom where I get no support from the staff, and when the very first thing she said to me is, here we have zero tolerance for violence in school. Here we support each other, a staff that's supportive. Well, it was just the opposite. So my mother always said that people lie a lot here. And you know what? I never felt it stronger than now, because now when we're in an emergency situation where everything is shut down with the COVID virus, I can really feel how I can't trust people. I can't trust someone to do work in my apartment. People here very quickly cheat. Money is the ultimate goal. Nothing, it seems like, at least in this big city, in this part of the country, it just doesn't seem like anyone has any other goal other than make money. And yesterday, I was forced to hear this conversation of 3 elderly women, and it's all about shopping. There are people here that have money coming out of their ears. And in this, I want to include the religious people that have somebody always paying for them. I'm talking about certain movements, religious movements, that have religious leaders, specifically U.S. extremists in the U.S., paying for them to live here and to be missionaries, Jewish missionaries, to get people to be more extreme. And you know, I'm so sick of it. It's just beneath my home. There is a group. There's a synagogue that's been taken over by extremists that have an American rabbi who's been in prison for inciting for violence. And these are things that take place under my very nose. So how am I supposed to wake up bright-tailed, what is it, and bushy-tailed? What is it, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed? And how am I supposed to just ignore it and just say, oh, I just live in my own little worlds? I don't really have a little world. That's the point. The way my life has turned out is that I don't really have a family anymore. I made a big mistake that I left my children in Europe, even though they're grown up, and I came here to rebuild myself and my identity. Because in Europe I didn't see much hope for me. I didn't pick up the language as much as I needed to. And in education it is a problem. And even if I teach English, I was always stuck in these private little schools with very wealthy children, and it just didn't seem like what I wanted to do in life when I wanted to make a change. So I came to Israel 4 years ago, and I've gone from one place to another. The highlight was teaching in prison, and I'm really sad I had to leave, but it was just not paying me enough money. They only gave me 2 days of teaching, and I just couldn't pay the bills with that. And I thought I could find more prison work, but I just couldn't. I just couldn't. I don't know why. It's not so easy. And I was teaching English, and they don't need that much English. They need more math for some reason. So, or I could have taught anything else, but there was always, I don't know, barrier. Age or whatever, personality, I don't know what it is. So, I'm going to sit here for a minute. It's turned out to be not a good decision. On the other hand, in Europe, I wasn't doing much. I wasn't like really doing as much as I would have liked to. But I had my children nearby. But then again, my daughter went to live somewhere very far away. And so that went, she's having a birthday soon. And so there goes, one option. You can't chase your children if they want to be world travelers, can you? You have to have your own life. And this is part of my problem. I've always been devoted to family, and the family was never devoted to me. So I don't really have communication with my children. Like, I'll speak to my children, let's say, once in a while, but it won't be consistent. And of course, there's the fear factor. When you're alone, you get really scared. If something happens to you, what are you going to do? And you have responsibilities. You have animals to take care of. I have 3 animals I take care of. And I do have nice animal people in case something happens to the animals. But if something happens to me, God forbid, I'm really scared. I mean, more scared than people who have families, because I absolutely have no family here. I have a family that would probably take over anything I have. They will take anything I have, but not take care of me, just like what they did to my mother. And that's a very real fear, because they took a very sick woman who had a stroke, and instead of taking care of her and taking her to the best doctors, they took her to a lawyer and took over her assets and changed the will. And I'm really, really scared that that's going to happen again. I try to distract, but I have no support system here. If I have a problem, I have no one to help me. So one religious woman said, oh, I will make sure you have food for the holiday. I mean, do you really think I need your jar of honey or your apple or whatever you're going to give me, or gefilte fish jar I can get in Supersal for 10 shekels? Do you really think that's what I need? A person needs their family around. And I don't really, I've never had a family, so maybe that explains why I don't really have a family. I've been watching this TV show, Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, and it really resonated with me on Netflix. Of course, it's American, and it's so sexualized and so trivialized. Everything is so like cardboard characters. It's just terrible. But there are deep ideas, profound ideas within this plot as well. The girl had no possibility of escaping this loop, because if you're born to a family that has mental illness and they treat you I'm not talking about extreme mental illness. I'm talking about inability to see a human being. Can only see people as benefiting you, and you don't see a human being, and you're not able to relate to human beings. You can't really have relationships, and then it's really tough for you to have any sort of relationships. And often when you're broken, you also choose broken people. And that's definitely what happened with me, time after time after time. I was the crazy ex-girlfriend, not an extreme like what happened in the TV series, but I was always wondering what went wrong, and I never got it that I always chose broken men. I always chose men that were not able to relate to me, were not able to see me as a human being, but only saw me as a means to an end. And the end was, God knows, just to have a girlfriend until they find their life partner, a wealthy woman with a lot of assets. So yes, I felt used, especially in Israel, because there was this deception. And when I talk strongly about transgenders, it's because it's one case of deception, but there's also all kinds of deception. Deception is presenting yourself as something you are not. And the problem is that I think it's less of a deception to present yourself as a woman when you're a man than to present yourself as someone who's capable of having a relationship or being a boyfriend when you're not. So I think it's really unfair on a lot of women that they're being presented as crazy ex-girlfriends when their anger comes from the fact that they were crazy boyfriends. They were not able to function. Madness is not only in being dramatic, it's also in being unreceptive. It's also in knowing you have nothing to offer and lying about it and insisting on playing a role. And I've had that happen to me several times. And there would have been not such a big tragedy had I not been socialized into thinking that having a man in my life will change it forever. The Cinderella syndrome was nailed into my brain since I don't know when. Maybe it's because my father was the only functioning person in the household. And then my mom really putting a lot of stress into me dating the right sort of men, and they were always men with money. And men with money just don't, it's not enough. It's not enough. Having money does not give you enough qualities to function in a relationship. So this big confession comes at a time before Yom Kippur, when I'm thinking a lot about my part in the deal. And yes, I was dramatic. Yes, I was crazy in a lot of relationships, also with my siblings, but I also got cheated by people. And then I got upset. And I always attracted crazy people. Now, sometimes I attract openly crazy people. So I've met people in Tel Aviv who are diagnosed with schizophrenia, which is a very severe mental illness. I have a cousin who has it, and he's in a home somewhere. So you have different types of mental illness, and then you have the mental illness that makes you a deceptive, broken person who cannot form real relationships. And unfortunately, there are too many people like that. And at my age, thank God, I'm able to tell the difference between the deceptive people and the real people. I haven't met a lot of real people. And then I've attracted like a magnet to cults. So there are two types of cults. First, there was the yoga cults, where they supposedly pretend to be spiritual, but if you speak anything, if you question anything about them, they don't want you. They just cut you off. I've been told to leave a yoga center from this particular yoga school, which I will not mention. And then there is the religious groups that definitely you cannot speak against them or be any way. They do not accept anyone who's different. They do not accept anyone who's even a little bit different. And they seem to only care about money. And I don't want to mention names, but one of these religious groups, I really wonder why their center is in New York. If you really believe in the Bible and the Torah, why would you make your center, spiritual center, New York? What is there in New York besides financial center? And a reminder that the Native Americans were cheated when they sold Manhattan for a small sum to the Dutch colonists. I mean, what is spiritual about New York? Please tell me. And I do love art, but it still doesn't make it spiritual if it's in New York. And yet there are leaders buried there in Queens, and they go there. I'm not mentioning names. And even in the coronavirus time, they can fly everywhere. They never have limited money. They can fly everywhere. They can do everything. They have no limits. They always appear very elegant, well-dressed, jewelry, clothes, big houses, big apartments, many children. I mean, you have to have a lot of money to be able to afford a lot of children and to dress them well and send them to Jewish schools abroad and et cetera, et cetera. Marry them off in lavish weddings. So the whole point of being religious or traditional in Israel has to do with money, because people spend enormous amounts of money on weddings and ceremonies and whatever. And so what I want to say is, the last point I want to make is about scapegoating Bibi Netanyahu. I'm not his fan. I've never voted for him. I've never voted right wing. But I do think it's quite absurd to go and demonstrate and scream that he's the problem of this country. I really don't think he's the problem, because we had, already in the 50s, we talked about the big social gap and racism between European Jews, non-European Jews, the poor and the rich, etc., the well-connected to the not well-connected. And Bibi Netanyahu did not bring the problems of Zionism, did not create them. What he did is, he did whatever Donald Trump and Putin are doing, is to make the wealthy wealthier, and himself too. Yes, he's a corrupt leader, but instead of demonstrating in front of his house, why don't you demonstrate in front of the education system, which is the worst, one of the worst in the world? Yes, there are people here that are very successful, but not because of the education system, but despite the education system. I mean, a person like me who is gifted could have gone so much further had I been in an education system that would have encouraged creativity